እግዚአብሔር ሆይ ልንማር በፊትህ አለን። የሚያስተምረው ጥበብህ መንፈስህ ከኛ ጋር እንዲሁም በክርስቶስ ኢየሱስ ስም እንጸልያለን። ሁሉን ትክክል እንድታረግ ኮኔክሽን እንድታስተካክል እግዚአብሔር አእምሮቻችንን ሁሉ እንድትቆጣጠር መምህራችንን እንድትረዳ እንጸልያለን። ሁሉም አንተ ክብር ይሁን በሕያው ልጅ በክርስቶስ ኢየሱስ ስም ጸልይ።
አሜን
አሜን።
Thank you for your prayer. ትንሽ እንጠብቃቸው እንዴ?
ትንሽ ብንጠብቃቸው ጥሩ ነው። አንድ 5-10 ደቂቃ
This is what we have been discussing about subjunctive mode. Just as we discussed before, subjunctive modes sometimes called mode of contingency and mode of probability. Even though that is the case, it doesn't mean that it communicates the reality of the action or the action that is indicated by the verb. So we must be sure that even though it is mode of probability, it is not mode of potential, it is not, even though it is categorized under mode of uncertainty, it doesn't mean that it doesn't communicate the reality of the action. For example, in the conditional sentence, we have seen that it communicates real things, in general, have just some real functions as we discussed before. So this is, we call it as mode of contingency, mode of probability. This is the what we have been dealing with, that subjunctive mode. Subjunctive mode ምንም እንኳን በፕሮባቢሊቲ ምንም እንኳን በዊሽ ምንም እንኳን በኮንቲንጀንሲ ቢገለጥም ያ ማለት ሃይ ፕሮባቢሊቲ የለም ማለታችን አይደለም። ሃይ ፕሮባቢሊቲ ማለት እውነትነት የሌለው ነው ለማለት ሳይሆን በተለይ ኮንዲሽናል ሴንቴንሶችን ስንመለከት በተለይ ኮንዲሽኑ ከተሟላ እውነት የመሆን እድል አለው ማለት ነው። ኮንዲሽኑ ደግሞ ይሟላል፣ ሶ እውነት የመሆን እድል አለው ማለት ነው። ያ ማለት ሙድ ኦፍ ኮንቲንጀንሲ፣ ሙድ ኦፍ ፕሮባቢሊቲ ኢቭን ዞ ዘ ኬዝ በት ኮንዲሽናል ሴንቴንስ ላይ ስንመጣ ግን በተወሰነ ደረጃ ያ የመሆን እድል አለው ማለት ነው። So this is the case that we have been discussing about the subjunctive mode. In order to find, or in order to simplify, or in order to remember what are the endings of subjunctive mode, it is very simple. As we discussed before, it is very simple because it is obtained by lengthening the connecting vowels, or lengthening omega to just omicron to omega and epsilon to eta. So when you lengthen the connecting vowel, you will find the subjunctive mode. This is simple, as we discussed before. You see our former analysis. This is the indicative mode. We know this all things. Once you know the indicative mode, then lengthen the connecting vowel in order to find that of the connecting vowel of the conjunctive mode. So this is similar to omega. Omicron is lengthened to omega, and epsilon is lengthened to eta. So that is the case. In order to, this is omega retains first person singular is unique. The context only matters, and then whereas that of this omega is retained throughout, it is ending, but the rest is just lengthens this. Either it ends with omega or eta. It is obtained by lengthening omega to omicron to omega and epsilon to eta vowels. So this is a unique feature of conjunctive mode. So that the translation goes to law that may will be added because of that. So the present conjunctive mode is the ongoingness of the action, and the aorist conjunctive endings indicates that the subjunctive mood marker aoristic aspect, undefined or simple or potential action. The aorist indicates that simple, general, simple and unmarked action. But the non-indicative mood do not communicate time, since simply they communicate aspect only. So we must be careful about that one. Do not have definite time, but they indicate that the ongoingness of the action, or else they indicate the general feature of the action, or else they indicate the effect of the action, whether it is started from the past and continues until the present. That is the perfective past aspect you have, or the idea of that one. The other thing that we must be give emphasis is that conjunctive clause or conjunctive moods expressed in conditional sentence and independent clause. So if they come with independent clause within a sentence and they come in the conditional clause, if clause, they have different usages. For example, in general, in the independent clause, we have different usage of that conjunctive clause, conjunctive mood. So we have this, for example, hortatory subjunctive, it is translator like us. And how do we know whether it is hortatory or not? Just the only thing is that the presence of conjunctive mood within that given sentence. I have included these different examples regarding conjunctive mood. Then I will forward for you in order to practice using that example, or else I must add additional time in order to practice that part. Okay, that is the case. So we must be careful about what does that mean. These things, hortatory subjunctive and deliberative subjunctive, prohibition and emphatic negation, and so on. This is usage of conjunctive mood in the independent clause, and that of if we are been dealing with the subordinate clause or dependent clause with the conjunctive mood, so we must be sure that the construction. So we have either hena or hopos in order to signify the purpose clause, or it may also be not only the purpose but also hena especially, it may be reason. Reason can be introduced by this, result clause, purpose clause, or result clause. So we must be careful about the usage of hena or hopos. Okay, these are the things that we have already discussed so far. As I said to you before, this condition with the indicative mood, for example, simple conjunctive mood express real, as we discussed before, assumes the premise is real, either actually true or hypothetical assumption of the argument, then it is almost true. That's why I have given that justification as my introduction. For example, that if you are being led by the Spirit, you are not under the law. That means the idea here is that since believers are led by the Spirit, they are not under the law. So, this is true, even though it is expressed by subjunctive mood. Okay. The other thing that we have discussed is that the imperative mood means command, and not only command, but also there are different types of imperative. Unique feature of imperative is there is no first person imperative, but in Greek, the Greek add third person imperative. Let him do something, let she do something, and so on. This is Greek third person imperative, whereas that of second person do or not do this thing. This is a second person imperative, but in Greek we have second and third person imperative. So the negation goes forward to, and it is negated by as like other non-indicative mood, it is negated by may. Then we must be sure that. Okay. Then imperative endings, just this seems like lue, and lue is luete, and luuste, lueto, luesasto. I have found some simple remarks that in order to memorize this ending is just start with lue and then just of course I will forward your for አንድ መጽሐፍ ላይ ያገኘሁት አጭር መንገድ ብሎ ያስቀምጠዋል። እነዚህ ኢንዲንጎች ለመሸምደድ አይ ቲንክ ኢንዲንጎቹ ለመሸምደድ ብዙ አይከብድም፣ ነገር ግን ጥንቃቄ የሚጠይቅ ስለሆነ እሱን ፎርዋርድ አደርግላችኋለሁ ከነፔጁ አሪፍ ሆኖ ስላገኘሁት አይ ቲንክ እነዚህን ነገሮች ለመያዝ ይረዳችኋል። Okay. Imperative use in order to main imperative is a command, but we must be take care about the present imperative and the aorist imperative. What does that mean, present imperative? Present imperative implies habitual or continuous action, keeping rejoicing, for example, keep rejoicing, keep praying, keep giving thanks, and so this is present imperative, whereas that of the we can give different examples from our biblical texts. For example, adiali photos prosuke, pray continually, keep fighting the good fight of things, and so these are the giving additional examples that I have added today. So the present imperative, general moral percept, practical, that should characterize believers' life, continuous or repeated actions, and so on. Well, that of aorist imperative, as we discussed before, aorist is unmarked aspect. It is that in general, this test in general. So the aorist in general description, so what does that mean? For example, consider it like joy. This is mental orientation. They have different orientation regarding aorist imperative. So, imperative of prohibition, imperative of entreaty, and so these are the things that we have already discussed about that. Optative mode is wish. Optio means wish. I wish. Not only it communicates wish, desire, and so on. So, for example, may the God of peace sanctify you. This is a wish, expression of wish. Convey a wish for the addresses rather than direct command. Negative optative, avoid or rejection, for example, found frequently in Pauline letter translated, may it not happen, or idiomatically, God forbids, and so on. This is imperative. Sorry, optative. This is optative endings. We have this optative ending, even though they are not common, but they looks like the second declension nouns. This is the ending for second declension noun, not the verb. So they have unique features, even though this is not given in your textbook. So just memorize, just ብዙም ሳትጨነቁ ይሄን እነሱን ዝም ብላችሁ አጥማችሁ የቴክስታችሁም ላይ የለም እኔ ያካተትኩት ይሄን ለሌሎቹ ግን ናቸው። በተለይ ሰብጃንቲቭ ሙድ እና ኢምፔራቲቭ ሙድ በጣም ኤክሰዲሳችን ላይ ወሳኝ ናቸው። እነሱን በጥንቃቄ በደንብ ማየቱ በጣም አስፈላጊ Just also revise something else regarding our former lesson. For example, we have been discussing about these things. Review of indicative moods. We know review of the indicative moods. We have already review all the things that we have been discussing so far. So shall we revise and for the second time? So review of these indicative moods. Just key morphological categories studies include lexical morpheme. We have, for example, we have morphemes, morphology, the stereoforms. In terms of this, we have at least 6 or 7 things we must know regarding the morphology of the verbs. So we have lexical morpheme or stem. So we know that. What does that mean? The root word of the verb or the stem, and this is the dictionary meaning of the verb or lexicon. That the meaning that we have been finding in our lexicon. So the other thing that we must be take care about our morphology is a pastime morpheme. This pastime morpheme is always epsilon augment that we have been discussing so far. In order to make that pastime or in order to signify pastime, we must add epsilon before the lexica or the first vowel of the lexical morpheme. So that is pastime marker. Whereas that of perfective replication, we know that one, especially in the perfect tense and in the pluperfect tense. That means in the present perfect tense and past perfect tense, you must reduplicate the initial alphabet of that stem. Then connect that initial alphabet by connecting vowel epsilon. That is the rule of reduplication. Whereas as a passive voice marker, we know that passive voice marker either theta, eta, or theta. So, sorry, theta epsilon or theta eta. So we have these passive markers throughout our lessons. We have already implied that passive markers. So this is passive voice markers are there. Future time is also indicated by the sigma. This is future time that is equivalent to will. So future time is sigma, then we call it the future time morpheme. The other thing is as aspect morpheme. We have 3 aspects in Greek. Do you remember that one? We have perfective aspect. Starting from the imperfective aspect. We have aristic aspect, and we have also perfective aspect. So the aspect indicates that whether the action is ongoing, whether the action is viewed as a summary, or whether the action is viewed as the effect of the in order to indicate the effect of the action or not. That is what does that mean aspect. And the final endings are there. Final endings means the person number endings are there. Not only person number endings, the compound verbs, they are the things that are added in order to signify in order to make the compound verb. So preposition, we call it prepositional prefixes. So that is what we have been discussing so far, morphology. Morphology means form of the verbs. Okay. Lexical morpheme, we have stem. What does that mean? Lexical morpheme. And for example, in Lu, the stem is Lu. And Ginosko, the stem is Gino. Gin is the stem. Blepo, the stem is Blep. And Aku, the stem is Aku. And so on. That is the what does that mean? The stem. And the stem is the name of the stem is lexical morpheme. Yeah, pastime morpheme we have already discussed what does that mean. Pastime morpheme is the initial alphabet is vowel, then we call it syllabic augment. Syllabic augment is added. If it is a case that is starts with the vowel of the vowel of the alphabet, then that vowel is linked to the next vowel, or we call it that contraction. So, for example, epsilon with combined with alpha, it makes eta, and so on. So we call it that is temporal augment or zero augment. If it not there is no any change. So, for example, this is diphthong. We call it that zero augment. There is no further change. That is pastime marker. So the other perfect reduplication are there. So in order to reduplicate, just take the initial alphabet of that letter, that stem, and recombine it with the epsilon augment, sorry, the epsilon connecting vowels, and that will be reduplication. So it can be either syllabic or either temporal, either augment. That is the perfect reduplication for that one. The other thing is that passive voice and future time morpheme, we know that one. As I said, you theta epsilon or theta eta is the passive markers throughout the course. We have discussed that one. Whereas that of the future time morpheme is sigma. And sigma is indicated. The sigma is simply equivalent to V. Luso is I will lose. And some amalgamation may happen when sigma combines with some double, for example, this is pi, labial, and dentals, and so on. This, when sigma combines with these letters, then it will undergo amalgamation on that one. Aspect marker, we have already discussed what does that mean aspect. We have three types of aspect: heuristic aspect, perfective aspect, and imperfective aspect. Heuristic aspect means just it is usually some. The heuristic marker is usually some, and in order to signal this is size, just elusa, for example, perfect aspect use ka, the look ka found in only the active voice. You have different features, ka or sa. Yeah. Whereas that perfect aspect is by reduplication. There's the ending is this one is a middle ending. This is the middle or passive ending. My side tie, meta time tie. This is the middle ending. So whether it is middle ending or whether it is active endings, then there is reduplication. Of And whereas that of the main so this one is the secondary middle suffixes. Metal tento, this is the secondary suffixes of the plural form. Whereas that of the active, the primary active suffixes means the present tense, future tense, and so on. That is the tenses that use these primary active suffixes. Whereas that of the secondary active suffixes use the aorist, for example, and the other imperfect, and so on. So they use not only the imperfect but also the pluperfect. This is the secondary tenses. The primary tense is categorized under the present tense, and the present tense, when you add signifies of the time the present tense is the ing form of the verb and so on. So that is equivalent to the past present continuous tense. The present tense is the present continuous tense in Greek. So secondary tenses are tenses that have this stem formative. Imperfect is one of the secondary tense. Aorist also one of the secondary tense, and the pluperfect is also categorized under the secondary tense, whereas that of perfect tense is a combination of this secondary and primary tense. This is true for the secondary, middle, and primary, middle, or passive suffixes. So, for example, if you present system present in imperfect tense, and lo is present active, loes, loe, loome, loete, and present, middle, or passive, lo omai, loe, entai, ometa, este, ontai. Imperfect, just imperfect is this is since it is secondary tense, you must add epsilon augment before the stem in the initial alphabet of the first letter, the first initial alphabet of that verb, and then this is the after that just add these secondary active suffixes. That is the formula in order to find this combination of this endings. So imperfect middle or passive, imperfect middle or passive is also found like that of the active one. Just add epsilon before the initial alphabet of that verb and recombine the secondary middle or passive suffixes. And don't forget to add these connecting vowels. Okay. Whereas out of future system, future active is just add sigma to that of your present stem. If you add sigma here, then that is the present active. In order to convert this present active to the future active, the sigma is added before the connecting vowel. Just add, or else at the end of the stem, or the end of the alphabet of the stem. So in between this, just add sigma here, in order to find the future active. That is the case. Sigma is added here, sigma is there. So that is, or else, in order to find the future middle, just add the from future tense. Then this is the middle ending. Primarily, this is the middle ending. Whereas the active, sorry, the passive ending theta, ita, is repeatedly found that we have already discussed that. Whereas the aorist means aorist active, aorist middle, and aorist passive. And as we discussed before, sa is the aoristic aspect morpheme. Sa is the common aoristic aspect morpheme. That is, it can serve as both the middle and active suffix. Sa is there. This is aorist indicator or aoristic aspect indicator. So just after this, just add the secondary person number ending, active person number endings, or else middle person number endings, or this is a heuristic passive marker. This is a heuristic passive marker. Then once you identify or separate this heuristic passive marker, then remember the endings are there. This is the secondary passive. The secondary ending, we don't have passive or active, just these are the secondary endings. We have already discussed that one. Secondary active endings are there. This is the secondary middle, these are there, and so on. Middle or passive are there. Primary actives are there, secondary actives are there. Just add that index. Okay. This is what we have been discussing so far. Just in order to refresh your mind. That is because that I have been presenting. So what does that mean? Why ለምንድን ነው ይሄን ሁሉ ወደ ኋላ ተመልሼ ሪቫይዝ ማድረግ ያስፈልገኝ? ምንድነው ቨርቦች ለማሁን እስካሁን ድረስ እንነጋገርበት የነበረው ሁሉ ምንድነው? በግሪክ ሁለት አይነት ቨርብ አለ። ቨርብ እና ኦሜጋ ቨርቦች አሉ። that ends with me or else they may end with me. So we have in Greek we call them conjugations. For nouns we call them declension. But Greek verbs can be conjugated. Either we have omega conjugation or me conjugation. So until now, we have been discussing about omega conjugation verbs. So what about the me conjugation verbs? I think they have a little bit complicated, but this is in order to introduce what are me conjugation verbs. So me verbs are unique class of Greek verbs whose first person singular present active indicing me rather than omega. So verbs can end with omega or me. Just this is in order to give emphasis. So how do we know the verb ends with in me verb? Or we have unique verbs are there, including Emi. Emi is part of me verb. Emi is simply this is the verb today, and the other me verbs are there. Didomi, titomi, estami, estemai, titemai, didomai. These are me verbs since they end with me verb. So they are categorized under me verbs. So this is few numbers. They are frequently in the New Testament and essential for scripture. So they have stem is distinct to that of the omega conjugated verbs. For example, dido is the stem is do. It is unique. So how do we know? Unless we are informed or unless we remember the stem, since they do not have a common pattern. So I think we do not have any ሌላ የምናስታውስበት መንገድ ያለ አይመስለኝም ኮመን ነገር ስለሌላቸው ማለት ነው። ሶ እነዚህ የሚቨርቦች ኮመን ናቸው፣ ትንሽ ናቸው ግን ኮመን ናቸው በግሪክ መጽሐፍ ቅዱሳችን ላይ። ሶ ፎር ኤግዛምፕል ስቴም ኦፍ ዲዶሚ ኢዝ ዶ። ዶ ኢዝ ስቴም ዜር ኢዝ ኤ ሪዱፕሊኬሽን ኦፍ ዜር the initial alphabet of do is reduplicated and recombined with iota. We know that even though if we reduplicated this, the initial alphabet of that letter, we must combine that with epsilon. We know from that's why I have revised so far. ከዚህ በፊት የነበረን ነገር ማስታወስ ያስፈልገኝ ለዛ ነው። ለምሳሌ ሪዱፕሊኬት እናድርግ ከተባለ ሪዱፕሊኬት ያደረግነውንና የመጀመሪያ ኢኒሻል አልፋቤቱን የምናያይዝበት በኤፕሲሎን ነው። This is common for present perfect, simply perfect tense, or else it is common for the pluperfect. Pluperfect is different from that of present perfect. The only thing is that it adds past time aspect after reduplication, and also it adds not only that, but also it uses also the past time ending markers. So that is the main difference between present perfect and past perfect. Simply in Greek we call it that pluperfect. So how do we discern? The question is, how do we discern for these verbs? So it is better to see the common features of verbs. So one of the first rule is that they do not governed by the omega or epsilon conjugation. So epsilon connecting vowel. One of the unique features is that in some cases they are governed by this rule, but in some cases or in some part of their ending, they do not be governed by this omega or epsilon conjugation. For example, epsilon is used before all alphabet except mu or nu. If it is the case mu or nu, we must use omicron in order to connect the stem of that verb with the person number endings. We know that one from our previous lesson. So, but these me verbs do not be governed by this epsilon or omicron combination. Or this is not the case, of course. That doesn't mean that they are totally do not be connected by this omicron or epsilon. For example, in some part of that connection, or for example, we have to see that this is present indicated. For example, D do mi, I give, but unfortunately this middle or passive is connected by omicron. D do mi. This is sort of the connecting vowel. So this is the case, but sorry, this one is additional, since this is this is our stem. The stem is D do. Do is a stem. You see that this is a stem. Do is a stem. You must remember that this is a stem. Whereas that of this is reduplicated. We know that reduplication only occur in the perfect tenses. So, but even though it is not really reduplication, since it is not combined or connected by epsilon, this is iota. So this is what the unique feature of this me verbs. So this is the stem or the root of this verb or the dictionary meaning that you find in your lexicon is door. The meaning or the translation is to give. Say didomi is I give, didos, didosi, didomen, didote, didoosi. Even though there is no connecting vowel here, but there is connecting vowel. It serves as like connecting vowel. So they do not have, the first rule is, says singular and plural differ from omega verbs in absence of connecting vowel before personal endings. All this is imperfect, indicative, active, and middle passive forms use reduplication and special endings. This is active and middle or passive forms use reduplication and special endings. So this is imperfect, indicative. Would you remember indicative? The imperfect is since past continuous. It means past continuous was in order to form our previous past continuous tense, we must add epsilon movement, past time morpheme, and after that, just add secondary person number suffixes. So it seems like it seems like governed by like that rule. So the middle one is also it uses this main soto, yeah. So the active one is also use the same ending. It look like the omega verb endings. So aorist indicative, the aorist indicative, as we discussed before, aorist is well known by it is sa or ka ending. So aorist indicative, aorist active is of instead of ka or sa, it uses kappa, single kappa or kappa or sigma of the stem, the didomi, and so on. A stemma has both transitive verb, aorist, and so on. They have different features. Whereas that of the future, but remember that there is kappa and sigma. Sorry, it uses kappa as a unique feature. Imperfect. This is aorist, for example. Idoka. This is not the aorist indicator. Would you remember this? This is kappa alpha is the perfect indicator in our mi verbs. So in our omega verbs, is not here kappa and alpha combination aspect marker, no? This is aspect marker of perfect indicative or yeah. ይሄ አስፔክት ማርከሩ የማን ነው? የፐርፌክት ቴንስ ለመሆኑ ነው የሚያመለክተው እንጂ ኤሪስት ቴንስ ለመሆኑ። ነገር ግን በሚቨርብ ላይ ምናየው ዩኒክ የሆነው ነገር ምንድን ነው? አንዱ የኢንዲንግ ካፓ አልፋ መሆን ነው። ሲሚላር ቱ ዛት ኦፍ ይሄ ሙሉ ለሙሉ የማን ኢንዲንግ ነው? የፐርፌክት የፕሬዘንት ፐርፌክት ኢንዲንግ ነው። በኦሜጋ ኮንጁጌሽን ቨርቦች ላይ ቢሆን ማለት ነው። ነገር ግን እዚህ ጋር ለምሳሌ በኤሪስት ኢንዲኬቲቭ ወይም ኤሪስት ኢንዲኬቲቭ ኦፍ ኦሜጋ ኮንጁጌሽን ብለን ስናመጣ እዚህ ጋር ሌላ ነገር ነው የሚጨርሱት። እዚህ ጋር ፐርሰን ነምበር ሰፊክስስ ኦፍ ሰከንደሪ ቴንስ ብቻ ነው የምንጠቀመው። ኦል ፊቸርስ ኦኬ። So the key feature in the imperfect me verbs, we have reduplication of the initial alphabet. Okay, that is the thing that. Okay, what about future indicated. The future indicated is ምን መጽሐፍ ላይ ነው? I think mouse ላይ ነው ያየሁት። mouse ምን ይላል? ይሄኛው ዶ የሚለው ቀደም እንዳልኳችሁ ዶ የዚህ የስቴም ስለሆነ ኦሚክሮን ወደ ኦሜጋ ኢሌንግዝ ሆኖ ነው የሚል ነገር ያቀርባል። እችኛዋ ነገር ቀደም እንዳልኳችሁ the stem is do ይሄንን ሁሉም ቦታ ላይ የምታገኙት ነው። ለዶ ነው ሶ ኦሚክሮን ወደ ሁለቱ ድምጾች ተመሳሳይ ስለሆኑ ሁለቱም ኦ ድምጾች ናቸው። አጭር ወይም ረጅም ካልሆነ በስተቀር ድምጹ ኦሚክሮን ኦሜጋ ተመሳሳይ ድምጽ ስላላቸው ኦሚክሮን ወደ ኦሜጋ ተቀይሮ ነው የሚል አናላይሲስ ነው የሚሰጠው። ሶ ኦሚክሮን ወደ ኦሜጋ ተቀየረ ከዛ በኋላ ሲግማ እንጨምራለን ነው ልክ እንደ ሌሎቹ ፊውቸር ኢንዲኬቲቭ ማለት ነው። እንደ ሌሎች ማለት እንደ ኦሜጋ ኮንጁጌሽን ቨርቦች ማለት ነው። ሶ ኦሜጋ ኮንጁጌሽን ቨርብ ቢሆን እዚህ ጋር አክቲቭ አለን። ፊውቸሩን ለማወቅ ከፈለግን ሲግማ ብቻ ነው የሚጨምረው። ከስቴሙ በፊት ሲግማ ነው። ልክ እንደዛ ይመስላል። ይሄኛው ሲግማ አለው ሁሉ ቦታ ላይ ፊውቸር ኢንዲኬቲቭ። ነገር ግን እቺ ነገር ዩኒክ ናት። ኢንተርናል ስቴም ቼንጅ አለ። ሶ this is እሱ የሚለው ይሄንን ነው የመጀመሪያ ሩል አድርጎ የሚያስቀምጠው ይሄንን ነው። ስለዚህ ይሄንን በዚህ ዙሪያ ላይ ይሄንን ይላል ማለት ነው። ኦኬ ፊውቸር ስንመለከት ተመልከቱ። ፊውቸሩ አክቲቭ ላይ ይሄንን ብንመለከትም ፊውቸሩን ግን ትክክለኛ ስቴሙን ይጠቀምና ከዛ ቲታን ደግሞ የፓሲቭ ማርከር ወይ ፓሲቭ አስፔክት ማርከር ቀደም እንዳለ ፓሲቭ አስፔክት ማርከሩን ቲታን ይጠቀማል። ግን ስቴሙ ተመሳሳይ ነው። ሁሉ ቦታ ላይ የምናገኘው ዶ ነው። ኢቭን ዶ እና ዲዶ ስንል በጣም አንደርስታንድ ለማድረግም እንቸገራለን። ዲዶ ማይ ዲዶ ሲ እያለ የሚቀጥለው ዶ ከሚለው ሩት የመጣ ነው ማለት ነው። አይ ቲንክ ይሄ ትንሽ ኮምፕሊኬትድ ነው ዝም ብሎ ኢንትሮዱስ ለማድረግ ያህል ካልሆነ በስተቀር ማለት ነው። So this is brief introduction and call them me verbs, or in general we have two conjugations in Greek. So Greek verbs can undergo either omega conjugation or me conjugation. So me conjugation have their own features, even though they do not have common features. That is what we have been in our Greek. Features, so they have, but in the case of me conjugations, including Amy is also it have irregular pattern, as we discussed before. So we have this. So that is the case that we have been dealing with me verbs. Most of the Greek grammar books put this remark at the end of their lesson. I think they put this in order to avoid any confusion. But እኔም እንደዚሁ እንትን ለማለት አልፈልግም እና ምናልባት ይሄ ሪቪው እንትን ነው ይሄንን ኢንፎርማል ለማለፍ ካልሆነ በስተቀር ኮመን የሆነ ፊቸር የላቸውም። ነገር ግን አንዳንድ ምናያቸው ኮመን አክቲቭ እነዚህ አንድ ሰራን ማለት ለምሳሌ ዲዶ ሰራን ማለት ሌሎችም እንደዚህ ትንሽ ናቸው ቨርቦቹ ስቴማይ ዲቴማይ አንስቴማይ እነዚህ ዲዶማይ ወደ 7 ወደ 10 የሚጠጉ ቨርቦች ናቸው እነዛን ቨርቦች በተናጠል ማጥናቱና እነዛ ቨርቦች የትኞቹን ታይም ነው የሚወክሉት የሚለው ነገር በደንብ ማየቱ በጣም ጠቃሚ ኤሪት ነው ኢምፐርፌክት ነው ፕሬዘንት ነው ወይስ ፊውቸር አክቲቭ ነው ወይስ ፓሲቭ ነው ሚድል ነው whatever it is ሶ እነዛን ቨርቦች በጥንቃቄ ማጥናት በጣም አስፈላጊ ነው ስለዚህ አንድ ነገር የምንረዳው ነገር ምንድነው ሁሉ ጊዜ ለነዚህ ቨርቦች ብቻ ማለት ነው ለነዚህ ቨርቦች አክቲቭ ልክ እንደ ፐርፌክት ትንሽ ኮንፊውዥን እንዳይፈጥርባችሁ ፈራለሁ ልክ እንደ ፐርፌክት ነው የሚጨርሰው የኦሜጋ ኮንጁጌሽን ቨርቦች ፐርፌክታቸው ለነዚህ ደግሞ ኤሪት ነው ሪዱፕሊኬሽን እናቀው ፐርፌክት ቴንስ እና ፕሬዘንት ቴንስ ጀምሮ አለ ዲዶ ለምሳሌ ሪዱፕሊኬትድ የሆነ ኮኔክቲንግ ቫውልስ ስንመጣ ደግሞ ኮኔክቲንግ ቫውሎችን አይጠቀምም ኦሚክሮን or epsilon connecting vowel አይጠቀምም so a little bit complicated so this is introduce ለማድረግ so about what does that mean conjugation in Greek so either they are me verbs or they are omega verbs so that is the case me verbs are their own unique feature and omega conjugations we have been dealing with throughout our courses so didomi titomi istemi and emis are categorized under me verbs so me verbs have special features a little bit complicated and they lack coherency in their patterns so that is the case so we must be careful about their person number endings and there is also irregular imperfection is there irregular reduplication and so on okay I think this is in order to remind what are me verbs okay the last section that it may serve as an introduction to Greek exegesis so it may serve as an introduction to Greek exegesis but it may inform that Greek ማወቃችን ለምንድን ነው የሚጠቅመን የሚለው ነገር እንደዚህ ሪማይንድ ለማድረግ የሚያገለግለን የመጨረሻው ፖርሽናችን ነው so in our reading Greek New Testament እስካሁን ድረስ የምንነጋገርባቸው ጉዳዮች እስከዛሬ የተማርናቸው ጉዳዮች ለምንድን ነው የሚጠቅመው ወይንም የት ቦታዎች ላይ ነው ተከታታቸው ብለን ስንመለከት 6 ቦታዎች ላይ ጥንቃቄ ማድረግ እንዳለብን ይጠቁሙናል okay key knowledge of Greek grammar allows readers to understand the relation between words and clauses በቃላትና በሐረጎች መካከል ያለው ሪሌሽንሺፕ ለማወቅ ይጠቅመናል ሚኒንጋቸው ምንድነው ሚኒንጋቸው እንዳየነው በጣም በሙድ ሴንሲቲቭ ነው ኢንዲኬቲቭ ሙድ ምን ማለት ነው እና ኢንዲኬቲቭ ሙድ ምን ማለት ነው ተመሳሳይ እንደሚይዘው ደግሞ እንደዚሁ በኮንቴክስት የሚለዩበት ሁኔታ እንደዚሁ አለና ሚኒንጋቸውን ክላሪቲ ይሄ የሚኒንግ ክላሪቲ በብዙ አይነት መልኩ ሊወሰን ይችላል። ለምሳሌ አስፔክት አንዱ ሚኒንግ የሚቀይር ጉዳይ ነው። አስፔክቱ ምን አይነት ነው? ሌላው ቮይስ ሚኒንግ የሚቀይር ጉዳይ ነው። ሚድል ቮይስ ነው ወይስ ፓሲቭ ቮይስ ነው ወይስ አክቲቭ ነው? ስለዚህ ሚኒንግ በጣም ወሳኝ ነው። ሶ ይሄን ሁሉ ለማድረጋችን ክፍሉን በደንብ እንድንረዳው ነው የሚያደርገው። ይሄ በህይወታችንም እግዚአብሔርን ቃል በጥንቃቄ እንድናጠና የሚረዳን ትምህርት ነው ማለት ነው። ሶ 6 ኤሪያዎች መጽሐፋችሁ ያስቀምጣል። አንደኛው አስፔክት ነው። ሁለተኛው ቮይስ ነው። ሶስተኛው አርቲክል ነው። አራተኛው ወርድ ፍሬስ ኤንድ ክሎዝ ኦርደር፣ ሲንታክቲካል ስትራክቸር ኤንድ ዲስኮርስ ስትራክቸር ነው። ቅድም ስንል እንደነበር ነው አስፔክት ስንል የአክሽኑ በተናጋሪው እይታ በምን አይነት መልኩ ነው የሚታየው? that is the meaning of the aspect. The action is viewed as what? በምን አይነት መልኩ ነው ስሎ ያስቀመጣል? continuous aspect ነው we call it that imperfect ወይንስ በጠቅላላው ነው እየገለጸልን ያለው we call it that aorist ወይንስ ኢፌክቱን ነው እየገለጸልን we call it that perfect. So this is what we have been discussing about. So ይሄ በጣም ጠቃሚ ነው። በተለይ ሰብጀክቲቭ ሙድ ላይ ኢምፔራቲቭ ሙድ ላይ እነዚህ ነን ኢንዲኬቲቭ ሙድ ላይ ስንመጣ aspect is very important. So in general we have 3 aspects with indicative and non-indicative mood. Is that non-indicative moods, they have only aspect, but they do not refer time. So whereas that of the indicative moods, not only they refer the aspect, but also they have their own time. They may communicate past time, they can communicate present time, or else future time. So this is the case of indicative mood. Whereas that of non-indicative moods, they have communicating only aspect. So they concentrated on the view of the action, whether it is continuous, whether it is viewed as or described undefined, we call it that undefined, or stated in general, we call it that heuristic aspect, or whether it is perfective aspect. So that is the case that we have been dealing with. For example, Christ has died. This is aorist. Present days of Christ as factual evidence. But this is aorist in general. It says that aorist. But the aspect is perfective. Even though it is described by aorist, the aspect is perfective. Since the days of Christ is not the past matter, but the effect is still present, or it is important for the believers. So the action that started in the past and continues as the effect is visible in the present, you call it a perfective aspect. That's why we must separate the timing aspect. So some verbs or some, for example, aorist may communicate perfective aspect. That's why I'm saying that like that. Aorist can communicate perfective aspect, or else present tense can communicate aoristic aspect. Aspect is not bounded by time. So we must be careful about that one. So even though the death of Christ is a past event, but the effect is still visible, or the effect is visible, or seen. The effect is very important for the believers. So that is the perfective aspect. So in the case of aspect, so it is very important in order to know in what aspect the action is communicated, or the action is described by the point of by the viewer or by the speaker. So we have, in general, we have three aspects: aorist and marked depict the action as a whole, so simple fact. Imperfective, marked emphasizing ongoing or repeated action. Perfective, heavily masked, emphasize the completed effect of an action, highlights the result. So key aspect answer, how did it happen? Rather than when did it happen? This is when did it happen plus how did it happen is the question of the indicative mood. Whereas non-indicative mood only asks how did it happen. So they only focus on the aspect of the action. So for example, is freak is perfective, highlighted the effect of the freedom from sin, we believe in perfective, emphasize ongoing, just as in order to remind what does that mean, aspect and time. The other key area that we have already additional example, all things were created, for example, which is aorist, the tense is aorist, but the aspect in perfective. Aorist tense may have aoristic aspect, or aorist tense may have perfective aspect. So you must separate these things. Aoristic means it is aspects እናመለክት aoristic እንላለን። ታይም ስናመለክት aorist እንላለን። Perfect ስንል it is the time, perfective is the aspect. Imperfect is the time, imperfective is the aspect. So we must separate these three things. So all things were created, for example. This is all things were created. We must ask in order to find the aspect, the action is ongoing, or the action is viewed as a summary, or is there any connection with the present state of the action? That is the case. You must ask that question in order to find, in order to signify the aspect of that action. So, for example, Christ died and was raised is perfective, trust the continuity, reality of the resurrection. Present participle emphasizes ongoing life in their Christ, not one-time action. Observing aspect helps us interpreter avoid misreading one-time versus continuous action in the theology and ethical application. That is what we have been discussing about the aspect, and that is the case. The other thing is that what is a voice? You must ask that one. In our previous lesson, we have discussed three voices are there. In Greek, additional extra one voice is added, the middle voice. Even though it is not common for the English speakers. So Voice shows the relationship of the subject to the verb action. In order to relate the subject with the verb's action, or else how do we combine the subject and verb? If the subject is the doer of the action, this is what passive active voice. If the subject is the receiver of the action, this is passive voice. If the subject is both the receiver and the doer of the action, this is middle voice. So what is the significance of this voice in our Greek grammar? That is the main question. So the voice guide is focused on interpretation. Who is acting and who is affected? Especially in order to identify the grammatical subject of the sentence, we must distinguish, or we must identify the voice of the sentence. What is the grammatical subject of the sentence? This helps us to in order to form the exegetical idea. Exegetical idea and theological idea is formulated by identifying the voice of the sentence, or the voice of the subject. Yeah, exegetical idea ወይንም ክፍሉ በአንድ አረፍተ ነገር ለምሳሌ ክፍሉ ተቀባዮች ቆሮንቶስ ናቸው። የክፍሉ ጸሐፊ የመልእክቱ ጸሐፊ ሐዋርያው ጳውሎስ ነው። ሐዋርያው ጳውሎስ ለቆሮንቶስ ቤተክርስቲያን ምዕመናን ለማስተላለፍ ፈልገው መልእክት በአንድ አረፍተ ነገር ሲገለጥ ማለት ነው። ለምሳሌ ኤክሰጀት የምናደርገው እንትናችን ፔሪኮፓችን ዴሊሚትድ የሆነ ሴንቴንስ ቢኖረን ክፍሉን በአንድ አረፍተ ነገር ግለጹ ብንባል articulate exegetical idea. Then timeless scenario, we call it the theological idea. So in order to signify, in order to state that sentence, the voice is very important. That it has very significance in order to reveal the grammatical subject of the sentence. Okay. Whereas we know that we have already discussed what does that mean articles. Articles are ለምሳሌ ዴፊኒት አርቲክል እና ኢንዴፊኒት አርቲክል ብለን ተምረናል። ግሪክ ኢንዴፊኒት አርቲክልን ባይ ዲፎልት አይጽፈው። እናንተ ናችሁ ኢንዴፊኒት ወይም ትራንስሌት ስናደርግ ነው ኤ ኦር አን ብለን የምንጨምረው እንጂ ኢንዴፊኒት አርቲክል አይጽፍም። ግሪክ uses definite article only. That definite articles, using that definite article is important. So the presence of that definite article stresses or refers to specific known entity, for example, the scripture. In Greek, it uses the definite article. So it refers to a specific known entity. Anaphoric stress refers back to something previously mentioned, for example, the page and so on. So definite article is very important in our Greek grammar usage or in New Testament reading. Whereas the absence of so it shows like means that is not known or it is unknown, but this is referenced in general. And qualitative traits, for example, describe quality rather than uniqueness. Paul is an apostle. This is obsolete. ሌሎች በጣም ያሉ እነዚህ ዲቴል ጀነሬቲቭ አብሶሉት ኮሊታ ጀነሬቲቭ አብሶሉት this is further elaboration about the apostle. So it is in order to stress the qualitative aspect of that subject. So we use the articles. So articles are very important. So the omission, there are two rules. Granville-Sharp rule. According to Granville, for example, article plus two nouns, it shows that unity, and repeated article, it shows as distinction. For example, our this is great is adjective. This one is possessive pronoun. So great adjective that just signifies or that gives further elaboration to God the Father. And Savior is also the adjective. Jesus is a noun, Christ is also the adjective. So Savior, so there are two nouns are combined by God and Jesus. So Christ, that means Christ is God. That it is unity. Since we have two nouns, our great God and Savior Christ is one article, but okay. The Savior Jesus Christ. This one article plus two nouns. Okay. If we have repeated article, two article, I am alpha and I am the alpha, and this shows us distinction. But two distinct things. This is Graham Bell's Sharp rule. Conway's predicate nominative. If there is a predicate nominative, the verbs. Hopula was guarding this was an atlas. In Greek, word was God, simply. There is no article before word. So and not only an atlas, but it is combined with the verb to be. There must be an article. So this is the Conway's rule. Observing article prevents misinterpretation of Christ's identity, doctrine, or theological statement. This is John 1, and John 1, 2. Dual 1-1 and dual 1-2. Okay. The other most important thing is that word order. We know word order, clause, phrase order. Just Greek, in order to make an emphasis, Greek brings the one that cannot be emphasized ማድረግ የፈለገውን ፊት ለፊት ያመጣዋል። That is the case of the Greek emphasis. So Greek order conveys emphasis. ስለዚህ ግሪክ በመጀመሪያ ላይ ያለው ቨርቡ ከሆነ ኢንፋሲስ ነው ማለት ነው። ናውን ከሆነ ናውን የሚሰጠው ማለት ነው። ነገር ግን ግሪክ ወርድ ኦርደር ነው ያ። በእንግሊዝኛው ግን ስትረስ ኢንፋሲስ ለመጠጥቶን ተከማል ወይ ታሊክስ ተከማል ወይ ስትረስ ተከማል ማለት ነው። ስታንዳርድ ኦርደር ኮፕላት verb subject object ነው። plus indirect object or prepositional phrase standard verb order of English subject verb object still የምንለው ማለት ነው። or else that subject may be complement. That is the case. It may have indirect object and prepositional phrase. So subject verb object is a standard order of the English. But Greek እንደዚህ ያለ Greek emphasize ለማድረግ ይፈልጋል ወደ subject object verb ሊያደርግ ይችላል ወይም verb subject object ሊሆን ይችላል object verb subject ሊሆን ይችላል ማለት ነው። So Greek emphasize ማድረግ ይፈልጋል ወደ ፊት ለፊት ያመጣል ማለት ነው። Okay. For example, in order to emphasis ለመስጠት ሌላ adjectiveዎችን እና verboችን ይጠቀማል። adjective እንደምናውቀው የስም ገላጭ ማለታችን ነው። verb ደግሞ በadverb modify ይደረጋል። ማነው adverb verbን modify ያደርጋል ወይም ስለ verb additional ነገሮችን ይሰጠናል። ስለዚህ pronoun ደግሞ ተውላጠ ስም ማለታችን ነው። የስም ምልክት ማለታችን ነው። ስሙን ተክቶ የሚያመለክት ማለታችን ነው። ፕሮናውኖች ስንል ግን ብዙ አይነት ፕሮናውኖች አሉ። ለምሳሌ verb elitos, eutos, this one is the adverbs. Emphatic pronoun is my, autos, and so on. Is my possessive adjective, mine, their, and so on. Nominative pronouns I, we, double negation who, may. This is double negation is used for the prohibition. You remember that prohibition? Subjunctive mood. This is prohibition. This is emphatic negation in order to make an emphatic negation. And the other thing is okay. Nominative absolute ቅድም ይሰለል ነበር። ለምሳሌ Paul the apostle, the absolute nominative absolute like that gives additional meaning. Nominative absolute means that additional Paul, an apostle of Christ, is nominative absolute. So ሌላ emphasis መስጫ መንገድ እሱ ነው nominative absolute. So recognizing emphasis clarifies the main idea, subordinate idea, and rhetorical focus of the passage. ስለዚህ emphasis የተሰጠው ነገር ምንድነው ብለን ስንል ለምሳሌ emphasis የሚሰጠው ነገር ድግግሞሽ አለው። ይሄንን አንድ ክፍል ላይ በጣም የተደጋገመ ሐሳብ ደግሞ ግሪኩ ላይ ስንመጣ የትኛውን ለየትኛው ሞዲፋይ ያደርጋል ሴንቴንስ ዲያግራም የምንለው ያን ሁሉ ነገር 2-3 ጊዜ ደግሞ ከተደጋገመ ምን ለማለት ተፈልጎ ነው ወይም ክፍሉ ኤምፋሳይዝ ማድረግ የፈልጋቸው ሀሳቦች አሉ ማለት ነው። የክፍሉ ጸሐፊ ትኩረት እንዲሰጠው የፈለገው ነገር አለ ማለት ነው። ስለዚህ ያንን ድግግሞሽ ነው ኤምፋሳይዝ ማድረግ የፈለገው ምንድን ነው? ለምሳሌ በደብል ኔጌሽን ከተቀመጠ ኔቨር ማለት ነው። ኔቨር ዱ ዛት አትጨነቁ ማለት ጀስት ኔቨር ዱ ዛት አታስቡት ማለት ነው። ወይም አትጨነቁ ጀስት ከእናንተ ያ ነገር ፈጽሞ ሊሆን አይችልም ነው። ሶ ኤምፋቲክ ነው። ኤምፋቲክ ከዚህ በፊት እንዳየነው ይሄንን ወደ ኋላ ተመልሰን ስንመለከት imperative of prohibition uses may I think imperative emphatic negation ላይ ያየናቸው Greek express strong negations with double negative indicating impossibility. This is who may plus aorist subjunctive. Of course, ይሄንን ኢምፔራቲቭን ይጠቀማል። ነገር ግን ሁለቱ ይለያያል። ያኛው በድርጊት ላይ ያለን ነገር ለማስቆም ሲሆን ይሄኛው ደግሞ ከድርጊት በፊት ያለን አክሽን እንዳይቀጥል ለማድረግ ነው። that is the subjective between the subjunctive and the imperative mood different. For example, this one is ume apollon tai iston euna they shall never perish. በተለይ የዳኑ ሰዎች ፈጽሞ እንደማይጠፉ ማረጋገጫ ከሚያቀርቡበት ኤቪደንስ አንዱ ይሄ ኤምፋቲክ ኔጌሽን ነው። ጀስት ኦልሞስት ደብል ኢምፖሲብል ነው። ኢምፖሲብል ሆሎ ጋይ ሜኡሜ ፕሪፕሮሲን my word will never pass away. Possible. This is fulfill the desire of the flesh. It imposes the subject after the impossibility of the action under the stated condition. You will certainly not enter. It is impossible to enter. So this is one of the emphasis in Greek. So Greek emphasize ለማድረግ የፈለገውን ነገር አንዱ ከሚገልጽበት ነገር አንዱ ደብል ኔጌቲቭ በመጠቀም ነው። ወይንም ደብል ኔጌቲቭ በመጠቀም ኦልሞስት ኢምፖሲብል ነው ማለት ነው። ኖሚኔቲቭ ፕሮናውንስ የተለያዩ አቅሞች አሉት። አይ አፖስትል እኔ ራሴ myself ማለት ነው። this is an emphasis. Okay. My children John እናስታውሳለን. This is an emphasis. Okay. there are also syntactical structures. Greek also Greekኛ ማወቃችን ወይም የግሪክ ስትራክቸር ማወቃችን ሲንታክቲካል ስትራክቸር እናስታውሳለን እና ቅድም ራሱ ሰብጃክቲቭ ሙድ ላይ እንደዚህ አይነት ነገሮች አሉ። ኮኦርዲኔቲንግ ኮንጃንክሽን፣ ሰቦርዲኔት ክሎዝ እና ሜን ክሎዝ ብለን ኢፍ ክሎዝ ወይም ፕሮታሲስ እና ሜን ክሎዝ አፖዶሲስ ብለን ከፋፍለናል። ወይንም ደግሞ ሰብጃክቲቭ ክሎዝ ላይ ወይ ማነው ሰብጃክቲቭ ሙድ ላይ በሜን ክሎዝ እንጠቀመው እና በሰቦርዲኔት ክሎዝ እንጠቀማቸው ጥቅሞች አሉ ወይም የሰብጃክቲቭ ሙድ ጥቅሞች ናቸው። እንደዛ ብለን ያነሳነው እና አንዱ ሜን ክሎዝ ወይም ኢንዲፔንደንት ክሎዝ ብቻውን ሰብጃክቲቭ ሙድ ላይ ሲመጣ ምንድነው? ምን ለምሳሌ ሄና ፕላስ ሰብጃክቲቭ ሆፖስ ፕላስ ሰብጃክቲቭ this is one of the indicator of the subjunctive mood, or else may plus subjunctive ምንድነው የሚሆነው ነው አንዱ እሱ ነው። that is whether it is independent or dependent clause. So the structure matters a lot, but this one is a little bit different structure. Coordinating conjunction, this is ሁለት አቻ የሆኑ ነገሮች በኤንድ ነው የሚጣመሩት አይደል? ሁለት አቻ የሆኑ ነገሮች ማያያዣ ነው። This is coordinating clause ነው የምንላቸው። ሁለቱ በኤንድ የተጣመሩ እኩል ክብደት ያላቸው እኩል ኢንፋሲስ ያላቸውን ሀሳቦች ሊሆን ይችላል፣ ስሞች ሊሆን ይችላል። በኤንድ ሲጣመሩ ወይዛች ኮኦርዲኔቲንግ ክሎዝ ክሎዝ that connected by that coordinating conjunction with that coordinating clause. Whereas dependent clause ብለን ያልነው አንዱ ሌላው ላይ ሲሆን ነው። ለምሳሌ ፕሮታሲስ እና if clause እና main clause ብለን አንስተናል። አፖዶሲስ this is the main clause, protasis is the if clause. So one is dependent upon the other. The if clause depends upon the main clause. This clause is a subordinate clause. So dependent subordinate statements, for example, I study Greek when I want to seminary. This one is called a temporal clause. This is a temporal. This is when I want to. This is temporal. Time in America. But I study Greek is the main clause. Or the independent clause. This one is dependent clause. So it can be temporal, it can be causative, it can be relative, and so on. There are different subordinate introducers out there. But this is the end. Other correlating conjunction signifies, shows the independent clause. Okay. In the coordinating conjunction, for example, we have kai, this is end, day, it is also end, or it can be translated as bet, but it is mild bet, ala, also strong bet, all, it is therefore is, do is also therefore, this is on is then, this is do is therefore. So subordinate conjunction har, that is for, hina, in order to, in order so that, this one is so that, hina, and so on. This is non-finite verb participles, infinitives are there. Is participle clause, infinitive clause, we call it a ከቱ በኋላ ወይም ከፓርቲሲፕሉ በኋላ መጣ ክሎዝ ማለታችን ነው። ሪላቲቭ ክሎዝ if it is introduced by relative pronouns, we know that one. Who, or whom it is a relative pronoun marker. So this is the one that is introduced by relative clause, subordinate clause, and so on. So this is the indicator. So ይህን ማወቃችን ለምንድን ነው? በተለይ ሴንቴንስ ዲያግራም ላይ ስንሰራ አንደኛው ክሎዝ የትኛው ክሎዝ ሰፖርት ክሎዝ ይሄንን የምንጠቀመው ሴንቴንስ ዲያግራም ላይ የትኛው ክሎዝ የትኛውም ሰቦርዲኔት ክሎዝ ነው። Example, main clause, let us run with the endurance, passive having so great clouds of witness, laying aside every encumbrance, entanglement, fixing our eye on Jesus. This is what we have been discussing, having so great a cloud of witness. እነዚህን ሁሉ ተመልክተን ወይም እንደ ደመና የቀረቡን ምስክሮች ተመልክተን ፈጥኖ የሚከበርን ነገር አስወግደን this depends upon something. This participle clause. So it depends on fixing our eye on Jesus. ምንድነው ዋናው ክሎዝ? ውጫችንን በትዕግስት እንሩጥ ነው። That is the main clause is let us run with the entrance. That is the main clause, let us run with the entrance. The rest is the subordinate clause. Okay. ስለዚህ የጸሐፊውን የዋና ሀሳብ እንድንረዳ ወይም ዋና ማለትና ወይም ትኩረት የሰጠው ሀሳብ የትኛው ላይ ነው የሚለውን ነገር እንድንረዳ ያደርገናል። እሱ ብቻ ማለት ነው። ለምሳሌ ዋና ሀሳብ ኤክሴጀቲካል አይዲያ ስናወጣ እነዚህ ነገሮች በጣም ጠቃሚ ናቸው። ዋናው ሀሳብ ላይ ነው የምናተኩረው ማለት ነው። የታስ run with the endurance. That is the main idea that is described by the main clause. The other are supporting ideas for this main idea. That is the case. So the subordinate means supporter also. It depends upon the main clause. So not only in the closure pattern, but also the ideas are also supported. Discourse structure, this is the final structure. ምናልባት ልክ አንድ ሀሳብ አልቆ ወደሚቀጥለው ሀሳብ ለምሳሌ ይሄ ደግሞ የሚጠቅመን ለዴሊሚቴሽን ነው። ለምሳሌ ኤፌሶን Ephesians chapter 1 verse 3 up to 14 ለምሳሌ ይሄንን ኤክሴጀት እያደረግን እያለ ከዚህ በፊትና ከቁጥር 3 በፊት ያለው 1 እና 2 እና ከቁጥር 14 በኋላ ያለውን ሐሳብ በምንድነው የሚለያዩት ወይንም አዲስ ሐሳብ መጀመሩን በምንድነው የምናውቀው? ማለት ዘመን ፖይንት ዲስኮርስ ላይ ስንመጣ እሱን ማለታችን ነው። ከሁለት ክፍሎች ጋር ያለው ግንኙነት ምንድነው? ይሄ ክፍል ለምሳሌ preceding and preceding context ማለታችን ነው። ከዚህ በፊትና ከዚህ በኋላ ያለው ሐሳብ እንዴት ነው የምናውቀው? That is the main point of the discourse, is like that. Discourse structure ምንድነው? So it serves us in order to identify the context. Context means the literary context. So that literary context is signified by this discourse. So, for example, we have Colossians chapter 1, 9 up to 14 is one of it has unit or thought or single or have a unit, one unit of thought. So in order to separate one unit of thought with the rest. This is a delimited passage. Because it's a delimited passage. Because it's a delimitation, just limiting your text or as full unit of thought. This is called delimitation. One of the initial steps of exegesis is just delimit your passage. So in order to delimit your passage, or in order to delimit a specific passage, we must know the structure markers. Structure markers are there. And ሀሳብ መጀመሩን የሚያመላክቱ structure markers ያስፈልጋል. Therefore, for example, car is for this reason. For example, in Ephesians chapter 3, just you find that one. Therefore, this is one of the structure of marker. So key markers for analyzing discourse: terminal features marking beginning or end, internal transition between major sections, partial, temporal, and logical relationships, participant focus and prominent. This is in order to know, or in order to fix your passage as unit of one or single unit of thought. This is what we have been called in order to identify discourse, right, or discourse structure. So this is the case. For example, Tote introduced a new section where this Tote is when Lukai Igneto and he became, for example, this is, and he became, it often began new section, Meta Tautu, with these things. This is a new narrative segment. Paul vocative brothers, vocative, and Periday indicate transition and topic shifts. To understand the unity, progression, and tutorial emphasis. This shows, or this ስለዚህ የክፍሉን ወይም የጸሐፊውን ዋና ሀሳብ ለመረዳት ይጠቅመናል ማለት ነው። ፕሮግሬሽን ለመረዳት ይጠቅመናል። ከአንዱ ሀሳብ ወደ ሌላ ሀሳብ ተዘዋውሮ እየገለጠ መሆኑን የሚያመለክተን ነው ማለት ነው። Okay. Discourse analysis enables a holistic understanding of a passage or a book, clarifying central theme and supporting material. Just እነዚህ ነገሮች የኤክሰጀሲስ ኢንትሮዳክሽን ስለሆኑ መጀመሪያ ያው ኤክሰጀስ ከመጀመራችሁ በፊት ክፍሉን በአንድ ትንፋሽ ነው አይደል? እሱ አንደኛው። ከዛ በኋላ ኦብዘርቬሽን ነው። የተደጋገሙ ቃላት ካሉ ኢንፋሳይዝ የተደረጉ ቃላት ኦብዘርቬሽናችሁን እንደጨርሳችሁ በተለያየ ሪዲንግ ማንበብ ነው። በተለያየ ትራንስሌሽኖች ታነቡታላችሁ። That is part of your observation, and then after reading this and doing your tasks, just start to analyze this discourse markers. የትኛው ቦታ ላይ ነው አንድ ዩኒት ኦፍ ታውት ያለው ክፍላችሁ? So that is a question of the discourse markers, or analyzing of that discourse markers. Is there any discourse marker in your ከአንዱ ሀሳብ ወደ ሌላ ሀሳብ ሲሻገር ከዚህም በኋላ የቦታ ሊሆን ይችላል ሀሳቡ የተለያዩ ነገሮች ሊሆን ይችላል። ውስጥ ላይ ኢንተርናል ትራንዚሽን ቢትዊን ሜጀር ሴክሽንም ሊሆን ይችላል። ስፓሻል ለምሳሌ በይሁዳ በሰማሪያ እስከ ምድር ዳርቻ ድረስ ምስክሮች ትሆናላችሁ ካሉ በኋላ ይሁዳን ጂኦግራፊካል ቦታ ላይ የሚመለከታት የሐዋርያት ሥራ ይሁዳ ላይ የሆነው ነገር ሰማሪያ ላይ ሌሎች ቦታዎች ላይ እነዚህ የሆኑ ነገሮች እንትኖች አሉ፣ ሽፍቶች አሉት ማለት ነው። በክፍል ውስጥ ደግሞ በምናይበት ሰዓት እዛው ክፍል ላይ ያለ ቴምፖራል ማርከር ወይም ሎጂካል ሪሌሽንሺፕ ማርከር ይኖራል። ዜርፎር በሕግና በነቢያት የተገለጠው ለምሳሌ ሮሜ ላይ ሄደን ስንመለከት ሮሜ 3:21 እስከ 26 አይተምሱ አንድ ዩኒት ኦፍ ዳውት ነው። ከሱ በፊትና ከሱ በኋላ ያሉትን ሀሳቦች ለመለየት ግዴታ ሎጂካል ማርከሮች ያስፈልጋሉ። ወይም አንድ ሀሳብ ጀምሯል የሚያስብሉ ኢንዲኬተሮች therefore is one of only okay that's discourse. So this is the summary of what we have been discussing today. Aspect, we know about aspect. What does that mean? Aspect, it is the kind of the action. Three types of aspect: perfective and imperfective. And the voice, the subject's role, the focus. And this is because in terms of this voice, we have three voices: active and passive. Articles, definiteness, conceptual unity, or qualitative meaning. Its presence is like that, and its absence is also, we have, doesn't mean that the absences are known, but it is described as a general without space-time, without giving any specification. General description, general description. ሁለቱም ሩሎች ይጠቅሙን። አንደኛው አርቲክል ሲኖር አንደኛው ደግሞ አርቲክል ሳይኖር ምን ሩሎቹን ይጠቀም የሚለውን ግራሃም ቤልም ሁለቱም ሩሎች አሉ። አንደኛው ሁለት አርቲክሎች ሲኖሩ ወይም ሁለት ናውኖች ከአንድ አርቲክል ጋር ሲጣመሩ ምን ላይ ግራሃም ቤልስ ሩል። ሌላኛው ፕሬዲኬት ወይ ኮፑላ ቨርብ ካለን ምን እናድርግ? አርቲክል ባይኖርስ ምን ነው? Okay, that was the absence of the article or the presence of the article. Anyway, the article is very important. Greek articles in the conversation alama. So first word in close order. This is what is that? Greek uses this in order to give an emphasis. So we must be careful about the thing that comes in the first line of your sentence. Even though in your translation that takes the order of subject or an object or complement, but make sure that your Greek sentence order makes matter. Okay, that is the idea of, or the use of Greek word order usage. The other thing is syntactical structure. Whether it has main clause or dependent clause. We know that if clause and this protasis and apodosis is one of terms countless syntactical structure. ዲስኮርስ ነው። ሁለት ሀሳቦች መካከል ወይም የሀሳብ ትራንዚሽን መኖሩን የሚያመለክት shows cohesion, progression, and rhetoric emphasis across the text. So, mastering this area equips readers to interpret scripture accurately, detect nuances in meaning, and drive practical application without distorting the idea. So, in ሁሉም የምናደርገው ለምንድነው? ይህን ግሪክ የምንማረው ክፍሉን በጥንቃቄ የክፍሉን ሀሳብ ሳናዛባ እና ክፍሉ ለማለት የፈለገውን ነገር ብቻ እንድንረዳ ለመገንዘብ ይሄን የሚያስችለን ነው ማለት ነው። ግሪክ ክላሳችን that is the end of the course, and if you have any question you are welcome. I think you have this lecture note and እንዳልኳችሁ ሜካፕ ክላስ ምናልባት ፈተና ስለሚኖረን ሪቫይዝ የምናደርግበት ሜካፕ ክላስ እንሰጣችኋለሁ አሳውቃለሁ ያን ጊዜ። ነገር ግን ፈተና ይኖራችኋል። አይ ቲንክ አንድ ፈተና ብቻ አይደለም ወይ ሁለት ሶስት ፈተናዎች ወይም አሳይመንትን ጨምሮ ማለት ነው ሰጣችኋለሁ። ኦኬ ጥያቄ ከሌላችሁ ካላችሁ መጀመሪያ ጠይቁኝ። You have any question? You are welcome.